This webinar is a demonstration of Salesforce's Agentforce technology, which is relatively new, and it's something Salesforce is putting a lot of stock in, as you can see the quote from Mark Benioff. So we'll just get cracking. Okay, a little bit about us. We are Zentso. We've got decades of NFP experience, cloud CRM specialists for associations and unions. We implement, support, and deliver cloud-based solutions. We have add-ons, tried and tested processes. I'm Ganesh. I've been with Zentso for about 4 years or 3 years, and I've been working with Salesforce in the association space for about a decade. So what is the Salesforce agentic layer? So the agentic layer in Salesforce is a suite of new AI features that includes virtual agents that do tasks for users automatically within the Salesforce apps. So this particular webinar is going to focus specifically on the Agentforce virtual assistant. It's basically a virtual agent, which is artificially intelligent. So Agentforce agents, so what can they do? They can understand goals or tasks users want to accomplish. They can take actions automatically in Salesforce, like updating records, sending emails, or triggering processes. They can work across apps and systems to complete tasks without the user doing every step manually, and that includes third-party software, so it can make API calls and things like that if you have set the integrations up. So you can build multiple agents that can carry out tasks specific to each department in your business. So that includes maybe a service agent that is front-facing, which interacts directly with your members or prospective members. So you can even deploy an agent to your public-facing website, as well as your internal members portal. So what's the difference between an Agentforce agent and a bot? Because Salesforce does have, so you might know that Salesforce has Einstein bots, and then they also have Agentforce agents. So an Agentforce agent sits somewhere in the middle between the capabilities of a bot and a human. So bots complete tasks based on set rules, so they follow criteria to implement an outcome, whilst the AI agents, they can't think like humans, but they can reason and decide on the best course of action. So what does it all mean for you? So when you're thinking about scaling member benefits, it often involves scaling staff along with it so that you can deliver those benefits to your members. A public-facing AI assistant, known as a service agent, or I'll refer to them as a service agent from here on, can help offload light touch activities that require minimal effort, oversight. They're often routine, low complexity or administrative in nature. And this gives your team the opportunity to focus on more strategic engagement with your members. So when I say often routine, low complexity, is things like, can I update my email address, or can you give me some information about my subscription, or when does my subscription renew, or I need to update a payment method, things like this. They can also help your staff work more efficiently. So as I mentioned, you can have an agent which is front-facing in your portal, and then you can have an internal employee agent. So that's just a virtual assistant that sits inside your staff view of Salesforce. And that can help with things like data retrieval queries, executing some of the more routine administrative tasks on behalf of your staff, users like field updates and record creation, or even drafting and revising emails and things like that. So are there any considerations when you're using a artificially intelligent agent? There are. So artificial intelligence comes in 2 different flavors. So you have deterministic and non-deterministic. And deterministic basically means a system that always produces the same output for the same input every time. So that's usually going to be things like mathematical processing. So for instance, if you were to ask a query like, what was our total revenue this year? That is a deterministic question that you're basically asking, because it has to do a mathematical uh, process in order to get you the result. So, and then you have non-deterministic, and non-deterministic is general queries like drafting an email or things of that nature. Salesforce uses ChatGPT as well as other well-known LLM systems, large language model systems like Gemini, for instance, is another one it can use. And these are basically non-deterministic systems. And non-deterministic, they always produce different outputs for the same input. So, for instance, if you were to ask it to draft an email 3 different times, you'd probably get 3 different responses. And that's mainly because each time it's learning from itself. So you get a different response each time. Salesforce basically gives you all the tools to combine deterministic with non-deterministic, because what often happens with AI is that it can hallucinate and just make things up, which is not what you want. So I'll demonstrate both an employee agent and an agent that sits inside your Salesforce org, which is used to assist your staff, and a service agent that's sitting in a community portal. So I'll demonstrate a range of deterministic and non-deterministic queries that you might get. So I'll just move on to the demonstration. If you give me a moment, I'll bring up my demo. So here we have a standard contact record for Pat. So it's everything that if you're using Salesforce, you'd be familiar with. And just a note on this Salesforce org has Fontiva installed in it. So there's a full AMS system within this Salesforce org. So some of you or most of you may already be using Fontiva. So this demonstration is in a Fontiva org, basically. So how would you launch the agent? You have an icon up here in the top right. If you click the icon, you'll see that the employee agent surfaces. And here you can see some fairly standard out of the box suggestions that you can do. So you can summarize this record and things like that, or draft an email. So I'm going to ask it a deterministic question, which is to tell me what the revenue is so far this year. And we'll see what it says. So it's asking me for a time range. So I'll just say here so far this, or I'll just say from the beginning of this year. So it's gone done the calculation. It's returned the value here. So this is an example of a deterministic question. So what's actually happening is I've configured a flow in the back end of this agent, which is basically doing the calculation. And the reasoning model, the Agentforce reasoning model, which is called Atlas, if you were curious to know what it is basically picking the correct topic and the correct action to use in order to respond to this question. So I've created something in the back that says if you receive any queries related to finance, then there's a topic with all the instructions and an action it can use. So the action is basically the flow, which is effectively doing the mathematical processing in the back end. And then that information is getting passed to the LLM, and the LLM is responding with the results in natural language here. So the other thing that you could ask it to take it even further, for instance, is what is the annual income this year compared to last year? These are quite simplistic for purposes of demonstration, but you can make it much more granular than this. Obviously requires a bit more configuration. But this is just to give you sort of an indication of what's possible with it. So you can see the income from last year was 50, and then the income from this year is 251. So other ways you could use this, for instance, is you could ask it, tell me how many members are associate members or something like that, or tell me how many members are associate and belong to a particular chapter or a branch or something of that nature. So this makes reporting quite easy. So if you need to report on the fly, for instance, then you can use the agent to help you do that. So the other thing I will demonstrate is a drafting an email. And drafting an email is basically non-deterministic because it doesn't have to do any mathematical calculations. So I'll just pop a question in there. So I'll ask it to draft an email to this contact, so this one here, with information about their subscription in the email. Include the exact term end date of the subscription, as well as indicating what the active membership is. So you can see in the prompt I'm giving here, it's quite specific. So there is a sort of, the more specific you are with your queries, the better response you'll get. So we'll just send this through. And in the meantime, I can see the subscription is here, which has 288 days to lapse. It ends 30th of April 2026. So it's drafted this email here, and you can see that it even tells you that it's an associate. Yeah, it's an associate, and end date is set for the 1st of May 2026. As in Fontiva, memberships always renew on the day after the expiration date. So from here, you can then ask it to revise the email or include more information. Then you can either send the email from here or you can copy the email, things like that. And I believe you can also configure it to send a list email as well if you wanted to do something like that. So that's basically the some things you can do on the staff side. The other thing it can do, for instance, is also, like, for instance, if you wanted to update the email address on this enter to just check what it is currently. Say again, this is a simple field update, but this can update fields anywhere for any records related to this contact. I'll just click confirm here. And also create records. So this is a really quick way of creating related records for this contact, or you can do more complex things with this as well, because it can see the record you're on, and you can, even if it was for someone else, for instance, you could just put the name down, then it will find the individual and it will make the ask if you want to make the changes. So 3 simple things here: drafting an email, some data retrieval, and a field update or record creation, for instance. And you can see a number of different suggestions here as well, should you want to go any further with it. And you can give it feedback. The more feedback you give it, the better responses you'll get. So that's the employee side. So what I'll demonstrate next is a agent that I've deployed into the Fontiva portal. Again, if you're not using Fontiva, all the same things apply. You can deploy it into any digital experience, Salesforce digital experience. And like I say, you can deploy also onto your website as well. So if you just give me a moment, I will set all of that up and then show you. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. So this is just a really simple Fontiva portal with not really much configured within it. So this is what you would normally get out of the box. So you'll see in the bottom right over here, there's a little chat icon. If I click the chat icon, it will then launch the agent. So I'm going to ask it, so we know this Pat has a subscription. So I will ask it a question relating to this subscription. So I'll just say, when does my subscription end? Now, you'll notice that it's responded asking for a username or an email address, and that's to verify that this person is who they actually are. So what I'll do is I'll just grab the email address for the user, which is effectively the username. Let's go to the UU customer user. So this is a security feature that comes out of the box, which I've just done some slight tweaks to. So it won't let the user make any changes without verification first or provide any details, any sensitive details either. So I'll just get the username from the user record and I'll paste that in there. Once I've pasted it in, it's going to send a code. So you can see I should receive a verification code, which is on my personal email. So I'll just grab that code. It's a 6-digit code. I'll pop that in. Once you've verified, it won't ask you to verify again, unless you configure it to do so every single time. So I'll just pop that in. It's going to check that code and it will respond. So you can see here it's given a response saying your subscription is for the associate membership, which is correct. It started on the 1st of May 2025 and will end on April 30th. It says what the subscription plan is, which is annual single payment with no automatic renewal. It tells them some information about when they might receive renewal communications, which is 60 days before. Yeah. So this is a really simple response. And this is something I've also configured in the backend. So I've said, if someone asks a question like this, give them this information here. So the next thing I will demonstrate is let's say, for instance, you had CPD requirements related to the membership. And this is normally information you'd probably keep on a public-facing website, normally in the FAQ section. So I've created an FAQ document for a fictitious organization. I think it's called, I named it Zentso Association, with a bunch of information about subscriptions, CPD, and other things like that. And I've loaded it in to this agent here so that it can refer to it should it receive any questions that it can answer with that document. And you can load in more than one document against the agent. And if you're using knowledge, it can also refer to any knowledge articles that you have stored against the agent as well. So I'll ask it, what are the CPD requirements for the membership? So we can see the response here. The response is saying to renew your membership with the Zentso Association, you need to have an active paid subscription, complete at least 20 hours of continuing professional development in the past year. And it gives a list of CPD activities, including all sorts of stuff that counts towards the CPD. You'll also see a source here, and this is actually the document that I've loaded in. So if I click this document, it will open up the FAQs. And this is basically the document it's reading and using to respond to that question. So if I scroll down slightly, I should see some information about CPD listed somewhere. So you'll see here, it says that you need at least 20 hours of CPD before you renew. And then here you can see what the activities are. So it's taken this information and it's relayed it intelligently back to the user to respond to their query. So the next thing I'll demonstrate is just a simple field update. So let's say this person wants to update their email address. Also, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them towards the end. So I'm just going to ask it to update my email address. So say email address. And it's telling me it's been successfully updated. So if I come back to my contact, I should see that it's been changed. Yeah, it's been changed. And if I come back to the portal and give this a refresh, I can see the information has changed. So you can see how this can be used as quite a powerful tool if it's just sitting within your portal to respond to those really easy, quick, routine questions that you might get through to your membership desk. The other thing that if you were to complicate this a little bit more, make it a little bit more complex, let's say you had like your certificate or something like that accessible within your portal, or you had a facility to log your CPD or qualifications. All of that can be done through this agent. For instance, if it were configured, you could ask it to give me a link to my certificate so I can download it. Or you could say, I need to log 1 hour from this webinar that I've done for my CPD. So things like that nature. Also, I've demonstrated this in a Fontiva portal. I know that Fontiva are working on their own actions and topics that will sit in this Agentforce facility. So, which is mainly why I've kept it quite light. So we should be hearing more about that hopefully in September. So yeah, Fontiva are working on some things that will work with Agentforce. So you might get some facilities to update your payment method or renew things like that. So we'll just keep an eye out on that when that information comes. That's the end of the demo. So can we trust it? So the AI features available in Salesforce are wrapped in what Salesforce calls the Einstein Trust Layer, so which you can see an image of it here. And the Einstein Trust Layer comes built in with all of the AI features. So you get this basically out of the box, and it's a built-in layer of protection, basically. So the Einstein Trust Layer uses a zero data retention policy. So none of the data is actually stored or used for model training by third-party LLMs. So you're completely GDPR compliant. So all the information, for instance, in the demo that I showed you, like let's say I think there was a question about the subscription. The actual data in your Salesforce is masked before it is sent to the LLM or the AI platform that you've chosen to use. So it doesn't have any access to that, and the information isn't stored either. So you're completely protected there. It only uses sources of data that you've configured to answer the questions. So what you've configured in the back end of the agent, where you tell it to get the data from, it's only going to use that information. So when you're configuring it, you will have added actions like I did in order to show the revenue, for instance. So in order to get the data, it's using the flow that I've configured. So I've told it where to get the data from, and I've also given it instructions only to respond with data that is actually real and coming from your Salesforce environment. There's system policies which help limit hallucination and decrease the likelihood of unintended or harmful outputs by the LLM. Potentially harmful LLM responses are detected and flagged. And then also prompts, responses, and trust signals are all stored in data cloud. So you can refer back to them for debugging or if you just wanted to check. providing visibility into the interactions and enabling improvements to your prompts and instructions. And then you also have AI guardrails. So Agentforce includes ethical and security guardrails to prevent AI errors and threats like prompt injections. You can fine-tune the agent behavior with topic instructions by editing standard topics or creating custom ones. Each agent type can have its own settings and safeguards. So when I'm referring to topics and custom topics, these are effectively categories which are buckets of instructions which tell the agent what it can and cannot do. So for instance, you can have an event management topic where you've given it instructions to say your job is effectively to provide members with information about their event bookings, cancel their bookings, or register them for events, things like that. And it will stick within that scope that you've defined. Again, you might have another topic in there, which is like membership details, all in the same agent. And that topic can include instructions like if someone asks about their membership, this is where you find the data and this is how you respond, and this is what you should and should not do. So you can have multiple topics against the agent. And you can also have an FAQ and general questions topic as well. So all three of those are configured and it was using all three of those different topics in the portal when I was asking it those queries. So how do you begin your AI journey? How do you get started? So what I'd suggest doing is potentially exploring what your use cases could be. So you could do that by reaching out to your business departments for suggestions and idea exchanges. You could also do some business analysis of your business processes and learn where there are inefficiencies or pain points, any areas where you could save time using the automation or the AI. Where could that have significant impact? You should always keep your users in mind to ensure that your AI use case ideas address your real user needs. And again, lastly, but it's probably the most important, is to ensure that your use cases that you come up with do align with your business goals. So whether that's to boost member satisfaction or to boost event registrations, etc. Once you've got your use cases, you'll want to think about which ones you're actually going to choose to implement. In most cases, you're going to want to start with a pilot. So just to see how the technology is working, and as for instance, a demo for your board, for instance, to get more buy-in and things like that. So there's a number of things you want to consider. So one of the things are, what is the financial impact of using an AI agent to actually deliver the task compared to a staff member carrying out those activities? So what's the difference, if there is a difference? Consider the technical complexity, the timeline, and the scalability of the project. So how difficult is it actually going to be to implement the idea? Your use cases will require differing levels of AI maturity and expertise to implement. So consider the change management involved. So the project size and scope and any training that might be required, or resistant if you anticipate any resistance to change. Your data maturity is key. So AI solutions only as strong as the data that drives them. And your use cases with the best leadership support will often be a smoother implementation path. And again, it's always a good idea to make sure your use cases are strongly aligned with your business goals. You'll see I have a quadrant on the screen. So when you're thinking about which idea you should pick once you've analyzed them, the best approach to picking a pilot project is to choose the high value, quick win projects, which are easy to implement and delivers high business impact without disrupting your business operations. So your first project doesn't have to be anything complicated. Once your project is implemented, it can be used as a proof of concept to increase buy-in at all levels of the business, and then you can start looking at how you might scale your use of AI or start working on another use case, for instance. Just as an example, we are on our own AI journey within Salesforce, and we've switched on Agentforce to help us. And we haven't done anything particularly complicated with it. We've just using it to summarize records, and we've got a custom action which basically summarizes the chatter comments against all of the tasks and tickets that we have, so that PMs can see a summary. So we've not done anything particularly complicated, but it's really the quick win stuff that is quite significant. Things that will save you time. So if you're looking at the quadrant, you'll want to land in you want to implement use cases in the quick wins quadrant, and then have a backlog of other use cases that you can get to later on once you have the buy-in and the budget and the time to actually accomplish those things. So high business impact with high ease of implementation. Those are the ones that you want to go for. So what's the actual costs of Agentforce? So you can actually get started with Agentforce for free. In order to do that, you'll need to activate Salesforce Foundations, which is a package that contains a whole bunch of different features, including the AI features that I've demonstrated. You can do that within your Salesforce platform itself. It has to be a Salesforce account holder that can do that, that needs to do that. Or you can also contact your account executive at Salesforce, or you can actually contact Fontiva and they can help you do that too. So what is the actual pricing model for Agentforce? So when you sign up for Agentforce, they have two consumption models. One is a consumption model which is based on the flex credits. So for every action that the agent has to do, it costs 20 credits. So for instance, in what I demonstrated, where it was telling you the revenue, it's triggering an action to tell you that. So that would cost 20 credits. And then if you're asking it to draft an email, that's another 20 credits. If there's multiple actions that are stacked together to deliver your outcome, then the credits used multiply. So for instance, if it had to trigger two actions, so like data retrieval and then updating a record might be two different flows it needs to trigger, that would be 40 credits. When you sign up for Salesforce Foundations, you get 100,000 credits completely for free. So you get a whole bank of credits that you can use to launch a pilot implementation, just to see what the impact could be if you had an AI agent. So you can use those effectively as like a proof of concept, for instance, to help you get buy-in should you want to scale it or continue with your artificial intelligence implementations. There is another model, pricing model, which is conversation-based, which is £1.60 per conversation. So that's not the credit model, that's a different model. So every time you use Agentforce, it would be £1.60. And that's regardless of how many actions it has to take or how many queries you give it. That entire conversation until you end the chat will be £1.60. So in order to actually calculate your costs and to figure out what consumption model is best for you, you'd have to first, you'll need to know your use cases first, and then what the usage volumes could look like. So if your usage volumes are relatively you're predicting them to be relatively low, and you've gone with some quick wins, so very simplistic implementation, then it's likely to be that the flex credit based model would probably be the best for you because it's the most scalable. On the other hand, if you've scaled it and you have loads of actions and you have loads of staff using it, you have loads of portal members using it, then you might want to consider looking at all of that data and then figuring out what pricing model suits you, because it could well be that the conversation pricing might actually work out cheaper for you. There's other costs as well that you need to keep in mind. So, for example, the effort used to plan the implementation, any support you might receive from external consultants, your own staff time, so things like that. So it really depends on how complex your solutions are. So, like I say, since you receive 100K credits for free, it gives you an opportunity to configure a pilot project so you can see what kind of impact it has on your business operations. The other thing to note with the flex credits are that when you run out of them, the flex credits cost £400 for 100,000 credits, and they do have an expiration date. So it's a fixed period of time that you need to use them in, and they also won't roll over. So all of the information relating to what the duration of the how long it takes for so when your flex credits are due to expire and what the duration of that contract length is can all be discussed with your Salesforce account executive. They should be able to give you all of that information. And there are facilities in Salesforce where you can actually check what the usage is and what you've been charged so far. It's called the digital wallet, and that will tell you how many credits have been used so far and things like that, and when your credits will expire. And that brings us to the end. So if there are any questions, what are the recommendations for use by unauthenticated users who could benefit from inquiries but could maliciously use up credits? So I think with this, you need to think about your use cases and what you want to use it for and how much business impact it will have. So if you were to place it on a public website, you need to really think about why you're placing it on the public website. And then the other thing is to look at your actual business and see what kind of queries you're actually getting and how many times you're getting those queries. Because if you were to redirect them, for instance, to your AI agent, all those queries are going to be coming in there. So you would need to check that. And when using an agent, does it respect the permissions of the internal user? Yes, it does. So if you are using if you're using the employee agent, it will respect the permissions of the internal user. So for instance, if they don't have access to a field, it won't give them any data from that field or anything like that. In terms of the actual action, so for instance, if it's triggering a flow, for instance, to produce a response, it will respect the permissions on that flow. So for instance, if you set the flow to run as an admin with access to all of the data, it will respect that. So with the actions, it respects the security settings that you've applied to the actual action itself. So whether that's a flow or Apex or API call. What are the recommendations for use by unauthenticated users who could benefit? So would agents count to the number of users, or are they separate? So when you create a service agent, in the backend, it's creating a service agent user, and it's only creating one user in the backend where you'll use wherever you're using the service agent, and it's against that service agent user where you would give it the permissions you want to give it in order to do what you want it to do. So there's for the service agent, it creates one user, which is basically an Einstein agent user that you get out of the box as well. And for the employee agent, it does not use a user. It's just looking at the permissions of what the actual internal user has. So just to simplify that, the service agent does use a separate user, but you get that user out of the box. Yeah. Just to go back to that first question, there is always obviously a risk of people opening conversations and closing them. So you'll want to think about your consumption model as well, because if you're on a conversation-based model, then that's going to increase your costs. Whereas if you're on the flex credit-based model, you're only going to consume the credits whenever it has to take an action. So if you're using the service agent user, I'll just respond to the question where do we need to manage permissions for the Agentforce user, or does it inherit based on the user calling the agent? So where you've configured a service agent, obviously you get the service agent user with it. And on that user, you do need to manage the permissions. So if you're using Fontiva, for instance, you need to apply the Fontiva permission sets. Otherwise, it can't read any of the subscription data or anything like that. And any custom objects or custom fields, you need to give that Agentforce service agent user the permissions it requires in order to carry out the actions and instructions that you've given that. Carry out the scope of that agent, basically. So yeah, you do need to manage the permissions on that service agent user. Not so that's different to the employee agent. Employee agent will respect the permissions that of the internal user who's posing the queries. That makes sense. Okay. So if there's no more questions, I think we will wrap it up. Give it last 10 seconds. Okay. So let's wrap this up. Thank you for coming. As I say, if you have any questions that come up after the fact, just send us an email. I'm happy to respond. Yeah, I hope you all have a very good day. Take care. Bye-bye.